everyone comes on. Give them about 20 seconds or so to jump on. Hope everyone's had a great day today. I know I've had a pretty good day. I'll get into that a little bit later on. We've got to be getting close. All right. Good evening and welcome to Tuesday night's Mate to Mate at 8. My name is Craig Turt. I'm the proud co-founder of 100 Words Mate to Mate. We are a men's health organisation raising awareness about the plight of men's mental health in this country, which at the moment is horrendous. There's more than 8 men taking their life every day in this country. And with the situation that we're all going through with COVID, that number is only getting worse. So tonight, what we want you to do, okay? Everyone's lost routine, everyone's lost structure. So we are going to add to your routine and structure by getting you to do this. We want you to ring a mate at some stage during the day and say this. G'day, mate. How's your day going out of 10? Or g'day, mate. How's your week going out of 10? Okay? Now, when you log on, we want to ask you the exact same question. So when you log on, we're asking you how your day is out of 10. Okay? So fill that in and we'll get to the results a little bit later on. Now, all we're trying to do tonight is mirror a conversation between 2 mates. Okay? No longer do we communicate in this manner. G'day, mate. How you going? Yeah, good. How are you? Yeah, good. That's not enough. Okay? You don't find out anywhere near enough. So what we want you to do is ask, g'day, mate. How's your day out of 10? Now, I say this every week, and I will always say this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I'm, in fact, a house painter. I'm trading. Okay, so what we're trying to do is get you to ring your mates. Now, we've had a whole lot of people jump on already. We've got people at 6s, 7s, and 8s. I guarantee by the end of this conversation with my guests, you will all be up round an iron, trust me. Okay, so yeah, keep filling that out as you jump on. Now, also, it would be remiss of me not to mention this. If the conversation at any stage tonight gets a little bit too much for you, there is always a number to ring. That number is 131114. That is the number for Lifeline. Okay, we hope you don't need it. Okay, but if you do, that is the number to ring, and there will always be someone there to answer your call. Now, tonight, as I said, if you're a 6 or a 7, strap yourself in because you will be an 8 or a 9 by the end of this. Okay, this mate of mine, Grant Chisnall, he's the father of 2 boys. He joined the army at 17. Now, think about that. I don't know what you were all doing at 17, but I'll tell you what, I was not thinking about joining the army. After the army, he had a stellar 3-vote, quite often, local football career. He's now a crisis management leadership consultant. He also does a podcast called Left of Boom, okay? And I know him as the great president of the Baldwin Greythorn Junior Football Club. The great man's on the screen. 3 votes, G. Chisnall. Hello, sir.
G'day, Turts. G'day, guys. Thanks very much for having me tonight, mate. I really appreciate it. It's a real
mate. The pleasure is mine and everyone else watching. Chizza, how was your day out of 10, bud?
Yeah, it's sitting about an 8, actually. I was a bit flat because I didn't get a great sleep last night. I had my first one of the training sessions this morning around, which is an online session here in the studio, which is really downstairs in the garage. and that went really well, but I was pretty tired after pretty lackluster sleep, but up and about again, mate. So what about yours? How are you rating yourself, your day out of 10, mate?
I had a good morning, and then I had to take my daughters to get braces today. So she was a bit nervous, and she pushed through. She's a little trooper. So to go and do that with her and spend some time and go and get a little hot chocolate later, and she was a bit gutted because she couldn't have the marshmallow, so I did. So, mate, I'm up and about today, and it's very hard not to be up and about when I'm talking to you. You are that kind of character, and I really appreciate your time tonight. I really do.
And no, look, I love being along, mate, and I think it's a brilliant cause that you guys have started, an amazing movement you've started. So, just really privileged to be a part of it tonight.
Oh, good man, mate. Thank you for that. Now, mate, you are a crisis management consultant. You, my friend, would be a very, very busy man at the moment, I would think, with what's been going on with bushfires and cybersecurity and COVID and you name it. You would be, as I said, very, very busy.
Yeah, it's been a mad year, and a lot of us are living through it, obviously, still at the moment. So, it's probably the similar sort of volume of response work that we had was probably going back to about 2010 when we had the Sundance air crash, and then we had a few other incidents with floods and cyclones and stuff up and down the coast here, and some other major incidents overseas throughout Egypt and the Arab Spring. So this year's a lot more challenging, I think, because we came off the back of fires, so people were severely affected by that. We had a bit of a lull overseas. Some clients had COVID outbreaks over there, so that was sort of supporting them through those initially. But you could see this thing sort of coming, and you could see it emerging. And I've sort of done work previously on Ebola, H1N1, SARS, those sort of things. So you've sort of had these things in the back of your mind as a plan that you crack out at some stage, but I never thought we'd have to crack it out the way we have here. And seeing the way it's playing through and the effect it's having on the community now has been pretty significant. And then, like you said, we've had on top of that cyber attacks, cyclone throughout the Southwest Pacific. So it's pretty insane, mate. And yeah, a lot of people doing very tough at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you only got to watch the news to see what people are going through. And you would have to be extremely flexible in regards to obviously adapt to so many different scenarios, mate.
Yeah, and the difficulty with any of these things is it's very challenging for a business in particular. Most of my work's with businesses, so I'm not a psychologist or anything either. My training and background was really from the military. I learned about strategy, learned about leadership, learned about training. And then sort of learnt after that about PR, corporate affairs and stakeholder engagement with the firm I work for up in Brisbane. So combine those together and it sort of makes for a really interesting support for businesses when they're going through their worst case situations. So a lot of my time is spent helping them either prepare for those, so to perceive these particular risks and work out strategies of how they're going to respond. Training them, so we do a lot of scenarios and exercises, stuff like that, to really put them under duress and see how they work together as a team and see how they work through that uncertainty. And then, as I said, for this year, I come in to support them when they're trying to plan their way through some really uncertain circumstances. So yeah, it's a bit of a process that I take them through, and that really helps them frame the problem, build out different options, and then start to look at ways that they're going to negotiate their way through the challenges.
How do you deal with the pressure? Because you're coming into these businesses and getting people to deal with their different scenarios. But mate, you've got to deal with them as well. Like, it's all about having a happy client, but you're going through, like COVID, you're going through that yourself. So how do you deal with the pressure?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because you've got to be careful that you're out there preaching to these people about what they should be doing and how they should prepare themselves and how they should respond. You actually got to take care of yourself whilst you're going through it. And so we were always pretty well equipped from military time about being prepared for defragging post mission, having debriefs, etc., that you'd work through, and having a process and a routine that you'd work through to reorientate yourself once you're coming back from a mission or from overseas. So we had that process, and you take that and apply that to any critical incident or a crisis situation. You've got people that are immediately affected by it. You've got people who are observers and indirectly affected by the situation. You've got families and other stakeholders that are going through any of these particular situations that they may be confronted by. And it's important you have the right psychological support, the right welfare support around all of them at different points, both immediately post, short times after, key milestones along. Now, again, we're seeing it at the moment with a lot of the leaders working across businesses right now. They've been going hell for leather for 3 months, 4 months, longer in some circumstances when you're going back to fires. So there's a lot of people, a lot of leaders out there that need to, as I do, and as I advise them to, you need to take that stock and have a bit of empathy for your own situation in times like these, and being able to put your hand up and acknowledge that you're not feeling 100% or may not be addressing the situation 100%. And being comfortable and confident enough to hand over the reins to people at different times to show that way or lead or take their turn and lead through some of those challenging times.
I think one of the things we talked about the other night was it's practice what you preach. So there's no point a leader getting up in front of their staff and saying certain stuff like, be vulnerable, unless they're going to be themselves. And that's what a good leader does. A good leader leads by example.
Yeah, it's okay to say everyone be vulnerable, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do it yourself and to role model that sort of behaviour. And so I often talk about it more in terms of empathy and And having empathy for any situation actually helps put you in the people's shoes and the feelings that they're going through in any situation, and enables you to adjust your leadership style or approach to that particular situation. So the situational leadership model, people have heard of at different stages. If you apply that empathy, then you're really thinking about the effect that you're having in time and space with the audience that you're working with. And some leaders do that really well, and some leaders really struggle to work out when they're meant to be going and really dragging people along. They feel like they have to be out in front, dragging people along behind them, and that was the way I was sort of always perceived good leaders to work. That's my phone. The opposite of it is that you've got there's times where you have to actually work yourself and hand over the reins to others to work their way through. So it's those difficult times, and picking the right times to lead and when to follow is really challenging for leaders.
I think a good leader also is part of the team. Like they're just as effective as everybody else. So there's no point trying to make out, and the perception is that they're not, but they are. They've got to go home to partners, homeschooling, and deal with the same shit that we all have to deal with. They're not invincible by any stretch. And I think what I see is a lot of leaders try to be invincible and try to be, oh, I'm okay. Mate, you're not. Okay. And the sooner you let your guard down, okay, and let your team in to help you as much as you're trying to help them, I think that can only benefit everyone, because no one's bulletproof by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and I think it's about having trust in your own ability and having the confidence in yourself to be able to hand that over at different points in time.
Correct.
And trusting in your team. I mean, that's why that's the benefit of having a good team around you and investing in them, is that you can share the load or shoulder the load with them at different points in time. That shared hardship is what trust is really built out of. And at the moment, again, coming into COVID, I think a lot of people were really they're stuck behind these computers all day. They're queuing themselves into the matrix, and then they were just trying to plow the way through. You've got to realize in any crisis, we are in a massive crisis right now. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. It's a marathon. It's never a sprint. So pacing yourself and having a campaign approach to it rather than just focus on the battle that you're dealing with now is where the real leaders start to shine through.
I think you've got to allow yourself to have we talk in speech of 100 words mate to mate is, how's your day going out of 10? You've got to allow yourself to have a 4 and a 5 and even lower, and just say that out loud. And that's why we think it works is, imagine a boss, someone saying to their boss, how's your day out of 10? And mate, really, I'm struggling today. I'm probably about a 4. Yeah. And that just shows so much vulnerability to the staff, and the staff member will be there for them because inevitably the boss has been there for them. And I think that's a really easy way to which to empower your staff.
Yeah, and so we would put ourselves into stressful, fatigued situations. So on exercises to really practice that. So it was part of the way we were sort of trained and prepared for life in the military, is that you put through these fatiguing situations, and you'd always know there'd be someone going really hard at one stage and dragging everyone along, and there'll be someone who'll be really struggling, who'll be sharing, you're sharing them and dragging them along and bringing them along for the journey at different points of time, and everyone feels that ebb and flow. So it really brought it home to me that that teamwork that you understand through that real shared hardship is where you build that foundation of trust. And if you've got that trust with each other, share it with each other, share the load now, because as I always say, a problem shared is a problem halved. Absolutely.
Now, mate, as I said in the intro, you joined the army at 17. I'll tell you now, mate, that was not an option for me. I did not want to join the army, and you became a lieutenant at 22. Talk us through that. How'd you end up there?
It's not such an anomaly as it sounds. I mean, I turned 18 in February, so I was one of those weird babies. So in that year, joined the military, went to the Defence Force Academy, which is a tri-service academy. Your Army, Navy, Air Force all together. You do your degree there, then you go to Duntroon, and you graduate from there as an officer. So graduated out of there and went up to serve in a battalion up in Townsville, the 2nd Battalion. And I was 1 platoon Alpha Company, looking after 30 men who were, generally older than me. And that again is not an anomaly. I mean that happens now every year. There's a new bunch of lieutenants that are commissioned into our services that are going out there and leading men and women who are older than them, more experienced than them, and given what we've seen now over the last 10 to 15 years, extremely more experienced. So 20 years ago we went into Timor, so it's probably coming up. It's our 21 year anniversary. Excuse me. Yeah. In a week or two's time for when we deployed, and we were some of the first in the ground over there in 1999. So that was the first mission that Australians have been involved in since Vietnam, and got everyone there, got them all home, which was the most important thing from our battalion's perspective, getting everyone home safely to their loved ones. And yeah, a brilliant experience. It set up everything for the rest of my life, really, about the military career. I had 12 years, and then learned a lot of things along the way, which I've now been able to apply, fortunately, in my current work.
Absolutely. That's anytime you speak to someone who's been in the army and represented this fine country of ours, it just blows me away. I was supposed to on this coming Sunday, I was actually supposed to be going to Kokoda with Matt Walton, our producer, and a few of the boys. And mate, I'm gutted that I can't go because I just wanted to learn so much about it. And look, we might not be able to go there for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I've had a lot of friends. That's our pilgrimage. I think that we all need to do at some stage. The other one's Sindakan, which was the death march through Burma, the Burma Thai death march. So that's some other friends have done that. It's not so well known, but some amazing. I mean, that's a sort of those sort of people and men and women now that have, and the guys now that are especially coming out of Afghanistan and those sort of environments. I mean, that is an extremely hostile environment that they've been operating in over there. I suppose in many ways I was fortunate I didn't deploy there, but equally, I suppose missed that boat as well. So it would have been interesting to go through that experience just for the challenge that does present. But I think, particularly when you're looking at some of the longer term effects, that there's some guys that are pretty severely impacted by their time there and Timor and other sort of places where we've been over the last 20 years. Absolutely,
the trauma in which the PTSD. We had a policeman on about week 4 of this webinar series with terrible PTSD after 35 years in the police force.
Yeah,
it's hard to watch someone go through that, and the trauma that you would have seen, you can't unsee.
And the difficulty with it, Turts, I think, is that there's no two perspectives are the same to any situation. We were involved in a lot of different incidents. They weren't really full-on combat, and so that's a very different environment that we were dealing with in Timor. But a lot of really tense standoffs, those sort of things. A lot of some shoot 'em ups, etc., that did occur over there. But everyone's perspective in any situation is always going to be different. It's going to be based on their own background, their own cumulative sort of resilience, and then also the effects of everything else that they might be dealing with just at that point or that moment when they're confronted by this worst case situation. So that's where, again, I think the point before I made about empathy really kicks in, because no two people are going to respond to the situation we're dealing with now the same. Two people are going to be feeling, their 8 today might be a 4 or 2 tomorrow. Yeah. And recognizing that and having the right triggers that you can see in each other become really important, because and again, it makes it even more difficult and more challenging right now, because we're not standing there face to face with our mates having these conversations. So the military did set you up for success in many ways around recognizing some of that, but it's a pretty amazing tribe that you're a part of. But when you're separated from the tribe, that's when the real concern starts to happen. And we're all separated from our own tribes right now.
Absolutely. And the key to a good leader is to acknowledge people's different perspective. And as you say, someone's 4 is different for everyone. 8's different for everyone. So it's the ability of the leader, and particularly when you're in a high pressure situation like you guys were, to be able to think on your feet and just make decisions really, really quickly. And this is the thing with COVID. Like, this has all come out of the blue. We haven't dealt with this shit before. Yeah. We are just knee deep in it and just literally treading water, trying to do the best we all can. with
Yeah.
homeschooling and working from home and all of that stuff. We're just not used to it. And a good leader sees through and can examine someone and try and keep up morale and people's well-being. And as you said, that sympathy and empathy towards others is absolutely key at this point in time.
Yeah, I think the other thing I tend to find is that it's a role that you're playing at different points in time. So, yeah, the empathy, the leadership qualities that you want to have are, that empathy, that assuring, and you want to be proactive. You want to be proactive in any situation, but at different times, you're going to be the one that's inspiring people. You're going to be the one that needs to enable someone else their opportunity, and there's other times where you need to sit back and support. So picking those moments is always very tough. And again, it makes it even more challenging when you're not face to face with your teams. So I can understand absolutely why people are feeling the way they are at the moment, and really empathise with them in that regard.
And the goalposts are changing.
Yeah.
Like it just changes on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
sometimes daily basis. And I think that's the bit that people can't wrap their head around. This is a moving target, this thing.
Yeah, look, and this is where I think where we've been blessed in what we were taught in the military is processes for actually working your way through problems. And it was called the military appreciation process. We could apply it individually or apply it as a team. And it gave you a process you work through to when you're confronted with any situation, that you assess it. You develop options that you're looking at around that might work, that are feasible options that are separate and very distinct. There's no point pulling out two options that might be exactly the same. It's really one. So you come up with multiple options. You analyze the different courses of action. You look at ways you can improve it. You look at ways you can break the problem or break your plan. You pick an option, then you start to trigger. And funnily enough, that mnemonic actually applies as adapt. So assess, design, analyze, pick, prime, and target. So it's a really good process, and particularly when you're confronted with uncertainty, because right now we're sort of told at the moment, 13th of September, that we're going to come out of stage 4. That may or may not occur. 13th of September may mean something to you in your business. You may be able to put a trigger around that to start thinking about what it's going to mean for you at that point in time, and working back from that now to go, well, a week out, if the indications are starting to look all right, then I'll be able to sort of start to order the stock, for example, I may need, or make a decision point for you. You may not lock in on that decision, but you've got a decision point worked out. You've got a trigger worked out, ready to go. So when you hit all clear or stage 3, stage 2, whatever it's going to be, you can start to plan what you're going to do when the triggers start to play out in your favour. Either way, that just gives you a way to start to control yourself and control your process. And in doing that, you start to get a bit of, you rest the game back in your own terms a bit.
That was one of the things that was mentioned a couple of weeks ago by one of the people we have on, I can't remember who it was, that said that this is a really good time to plan.
Yeah.
Really good time to plan and make sure that you are ready to go. When that, if things do get lifted on the 13th, you're ready to hit the road running.
Yeah, look, we always said that a plan never survives the first shot in battle, but planning is essential. So we planned everything to the nth degree before we deployed, and then we can pick out of a grab bag, well, if this happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do that. This is how I'm going to potentially respond to these situations. And then you're reading the play then, and then defining what you're going to do or deciding what you're going to do based on what you're seeing in front of you. So that's the benefit that you have from the military side, and I think it works well as a bit of a planning process to try and work your way through any problem.
The key word you said then before was adapt, and I think that's one thing as a theme when you see people leaving their careers, and a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people within their workplace have had to adapt and change. And how much have you seen that play a part in the last, or particularly all year, really?
Yeah, I think in any situation you're confronted by, I think there's either you'll take an optimism bias or a pessimism bias. I pretty well know which way you're going to go, TURTS. You'll be on the optimism bias side, so the glass half full. And in any of these sort of circumstances, then the people that can quickly identify a way through that uncertainty are the ones that can adapt to the situation that they're dealing with. And And that may seem completely, seem completely out of reach to some people, particularly when you're mired in the doubt, the uncertainty, and what you call analysis paralysis. I've got all these things that have happened at once. I've got all these issues that are happening now. I've got all these problems that it's been created by this situation, jobs lost, whatever it may be, that's really compounding the issue for everyone at the moment. So actually taking a step back, taking a breath, actually starting to look and write down what the problems are is just a simple way to start to line it out. And if you write down what the problems are on one side of the page at least, you don't have to go through a full methodology or a process. Write down on the one side and write down some potential solutions on the other side of the page. Take that bit of paper and go and sit down with one of your mates via Zoom, whatever it may be, and go, here's what we got. A great example, a mate of mine was a school teacher, got sacked. He just started a job as an outdoor ed teacher at the school down in Brighton, got sacked, made redundant in the first block of a few weeks. He spoke to some of us. He was really, really in a bad way. He was isolated. He just split up with his family, split up with his wife recently. So was separated from his family as well because he's got a Crohn's disease. So a lot of different issues going on with him at the same time in isolation round one, along with losing a job. He's actually now created a business called Outdoor Ed Services Australia, where he's outsourced as a service, delivering the stuff that he was trained and been inspired all his life to do. And he's created a business through this, going out and doing that for schools who need that advice right now because unfortunately they're in the same boat. They're losing a lot of staff, etc. there. So out of that situation, him just sharing the problem with a few of us that have been through setting up businesses or whatever else it was able to really define a path for him to get out of the problem. And he's, he even got offered a job the other day. He's knocked the job back because he's so invested now in this business idea and it's really working well for him. So anything like that, sharing that problem, writing it down, looking at different options, sharing it with a friend is a really good starting point.
The key to that, my friend, is communication. That's what that key is. Don't go into your shell. This is really hard. People are isolated. They've lost their identity due to losing their job, marriage breakdown, whatever it may be. And it's so important to not go into your shell. You need to continually communicate. And that isolation and lack of self-awareness and self-identity. We talked the other night about, I hate relaying everything back to football, but it's makes it easy for people.
That's a great metaphor. No, you're right.
Yeah, people come out of the footy. People come out of the army. Like you come out of the army. You're a classic case, mate. You come out of the army, and did you feel as though there was a loss of your identity at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're a tribal beasts. It's the way we all work. We love being around people. We love being involved. And my history was always being around football clubs. From a kid, filling around Melbourne, coaching, playing, boys' school, army. Everything about your self-identity, for me anyway, was wrapped up in that uniform and in your career that you've established for yourself. So stepping away from that was a conscious decision for me. So I wasn't forced out. But I know how hard it is for, particularly for guys who are forced out. So if your whole life has been focused on getting yourself to an elite football level, and then you have that taken away from you through injury or through being sacked from the club or removed, whatever it may be, that leaves a massive hole for people who all their self-identity has been wrapped up in that role that they're performing. Military has been the same. So you separate someone from the tribe and then they're all of a sudden in isolation themselves and they find it very hard to reach back. And that's when you need to really be proactive. When you're seeing guys starting to separate themselves from the pack a little bit, that's when that proactive outreach is really important to start to break a cycle of isolation, self-isolation.
I agree. We all know someone who has lost their job and who is struggling with the isolation or their identity at the moment, and is an incumbent upon us as mates to ring them all the time and just ask them how the day is going out of 10. Some days they're going to have 8, some days they're going to have 2. Guess what? You need to be there on the phone when they're having a 2. Okay, I think that's a really important part that we play. And I work on the theory of I'm really, really lucky. I've still got my job and I'm allowed to work. So it's incumbent upon me to give back to others, okay, because I am so lucky. And it's really hard for those who are in a shit situation where they've lost their job or they feel isolated and they're living by themselves to get up on the front foot and ring their mates, okay, because they're really struggling.
Yeah, pride plays a massive part.
No doubt, no doubt.
And blokes in particular, we're pretty proud sort of beasts. So you can understand why it's hard to reach out, and I think that's why, like you said, Turts, it's so important now to when you get that sense, just to make that call. What you've taught me with the rating your day, how's your day out of 10, is so smart, because it doesn't matter what the rating is. It doesn't matter what the scale means. So some people will normally pick a scale. They go, well, what does 1 mean and what does 10 mean? Well, you tell me, mate. How are you feeling? How would you rate yourself at the moment out of 10? And I think it really does sharpen the point, and it forces them to actually put a line in the sand. And I think that's a really smart part of what you taught me.
Look, it works, mate. And the other thing it does too is, and I say this mostly, if you're someone who's struggling, right, and you don't know how to bring it up with your mates, try this, okay? If, for example, say I'm really, really struggling. If I ask you how your day is out of 10, you're then going to ask me.
Yeah.
And all I have to say, if I'm really doing it hard, I go, you ask me, and I go, I'm a 2. Bang. And then that will just promote more conversation. So it actually works both ways.
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen. I've encouraged guys to do it, and they've rung me and said, Turts, that actually worked. That was a really, really easy way for me to tell my mates that I'm struggling.
Yeah. It's
really easy way.
No, it was. I've never heard of that before until speaking with you guys, and so I think it's a really poignant way to go about that conversation. It gives us a tool to go with. I mean, we've heard of the "Are you okay?" but unfortunately, sometimes the answer is yes. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you have to stop and think and give it a number, and quite often what I get is, "G'day, mate. How's your day going out of 10?" What? G'day, mate. How's your day going out of 10? What do you mean? Okay, so 10 being really good and 1 being shit house. And they stop and they think.
Yeah.
And then they inevitably ask me the same thing.
Yeah.
So, now, mate, sorry, mate, I've lost my screen here. I'm just going to go to a question by a guy, Don. Now, this man is an absolute star. He won't like me saying this, but I've had a lot to do with this gentleman, Don. I won't give you a surname. But Don, I know you're watching there, mate. You, my friend, you are second to none. What you are doing at the moment for some of your staff is so admirable, and you should be so proud of yourself, mate. I know it's a bit hard because no one else watching knows, but mate, Don, just keep doing what you're doing, mate. You're a star. He says he asked us how our day's out of 10. You must have missed the front of the show there, Donny boy. You must have missed it.
8 for me, Don.
Yeah, I was an 8, Don, but I'm heading very, very much north to a 9 at the moment. How do you guys deal with stress? Like, do you do exercise? Do you read or anything like that? He says, I like to use the wood lathe. He gets out there in the old wood lathe, and then he can just sit there and then ponder. And so we talked about this the other night at a presentation we did. It's not one hat fits all.
No.
It's whatever works for you. You just got to find it.
Yeah, I must say I'm a bit of a fan of that, Don, because I see some of those videos on Facebook, which I'm watching way too much of at the moment, where you see those guys with the wood lathe or whatever it is that they're doing. I just wish I could do something like that, because I don't have those sort of hobbies. So for me, I read. I do try and exercise as regularly as I can, but over last week or two, I've been more inconsistent, so I need to get that consistency of routine back in, and that often comes off the back of bad sleep. So if I'm worried about stuff, or I'm not sleeping that well, or just wake up at night with mind racing, that'll influence my exercise routine for the week. So food intake's another important one. When I'm eating crap food too, you start to feel really ordinary. So I did that over the weekend. We're realigning this week. We're up and down a bit with some of those. I think that's okay to acknowledge that too at the moment. Absolutely. Not be too hard on yourself at the moment on those sort of things. But trying to get outside, do a bit of exercise is important at the moment.
Mate, being a leadership expert, how do you encourage people to show leadership in their networks during this time? You talked before about trust being a massive thing.
Yeah, I mean, trust isn't easily established. I mean,
No.
you've got to actually give something of yourself in order to get that trust from others. So this is a prime opportunity. So if you're taking those opportunities within your business or within your work or within the environments that you're working in, then or just amongst your friends and your network that you have, then these are sorts of things where you're able to generate that sort of or that money in the bank that becomes trust for you down the track.
Yeah. Mate, I love one of the comments you made the other night. You can't own the problem, but you can own the response. I absolutely love that. Talk me through that.
Yeah, well, you can't pick these situations, Turts, and we're seeing that right now. But you can, and this is, I mean, it's easy for me to say in some cases. It's very easy for someone to stand up and go, yeah, well, you don't let the situation control you. You control the situation. I mean that's bullshit. The point is, what you can do though is start to control yourself, control your emotion, and start to control your response to any of these situations by, again, just taking that step back. We had techniques like they taught us around combat breathing or box breathing, those sort of things when you're under duress, around regaining control of your emotion. Your anxiety levels are right up. You feel like your adrenaline's really flowing through, especially when you come off an activity that you've gone through. Or you're in the heat of it. So really controlling that breathing is a starting point. So if you feel that you can feel physically when you're under pressure. That's the great thing about our bodies, is it'll tell you, okay, I can feel that something's not right at the moment. So taking that moment to step back from the problem, the situation, the conversation, the meeting that you're going through, and acknowledging that first is a good starting point. And then you can look at a strategy for either dealing with that, sharing the problem, saying to other people, I'm not 100% right now. I can't. If I go further, I know me. I get the red line. I can feel it, and the small man syndrome kicks in, and that's a leadership issue for me. I'll go in those circumstances. Back in the day, I'm like a bull at a gate, and wanting to get in and address the problem straight up. I had to learn to take a step back, because otherwise I was really breaking heads and wasn't actually getting outcomes that we wanted.
You sure we weren't separated at birth? I'm exactly the same. Um, and two words I've learned, I talked about this the other week, two words that I've learned a lot recently is stop and choice. Just stop, Craig. Just stop what you're doing, okay? And you've got a choice of what you do from this point on. The other thing, Dr. Alex West is a dear friend of mine. I did a presentation with her the other day. And she talks about 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days. So when the problem rises, is it going to affect me in 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, and 5 days? And inevitably, whatever scenario you come up with fits in amongst all that.
Yeah.
So, prime example, some dickhead cuts you off. Is it going to matter in 5 minutes? No, it's not. So don't lose it. No big deal.
Yeah.
You're waiting in line and at Bunnings. Not that you have to now. It's awesome. You get through that quickly. It's not funny. But you just got to stop and go, okay, is this going to affect me in 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days? And it's a really, really clever tool. Mind you, in the heat of the moment, it can be a little testing, a little hard, I must say. But if you can get that under control, massive asset.
Yeah, I think it's again, the mindset issue is always going to be the biggest impact on you coming into any confrontation or any situation. So if you're already on edge, which we all are in some way, shape or form, again, it's about acknowledging that before you're putting yourself into the situation. And then once you're in the situation, it's acknowledging it further and maybe stepping back. But then the big thing you said before is that choice. And a lot of people they just actually react and think that that's what you do in any situation. You react. But as soon as you're reacting, you're in reactive mode. You're not actually responding to the situation. So again, taking that step back, taking the moment to plan or think about what it's going to mean, what the situation means to you right now over time. Like you said, the 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days is a great little analogy or a memory trick for you. That starts to get you to think, okay, well, this is a bigger problem or it's a small problem. How can I box this into an area so I can start to solve it and make a decision about what I'm going to do about it?
I think the other thing too that leaders tend to fall into, and I know I do this, I'm only a small team of myself and two others, is I don't share the problem.
Mm.
Okay? I've got to learn to share the problem. Hey, boys, what do you reckon we should do here? And I think that just encourages people to stand up and help the boss along. And if they feel as though they can do that, they just feel like they're more part of the team. So sharing the issue and not just taking it all and trying to be a hero, I think so. Do you give advice around that?
Yeah, it's about that trust thing again, Turts. It's interesting you change a few letters around in your name, it becomes trust, doesn't it? You haven't thought about that too.
Hey, good one. I like it.
The
New show, Trust Hurts. I love it.
Turts, there you go. the
Wednesday nights, 8 o'clock.
So back to back, go for it. Matt will be happy with that. But
he'll be wrapped, the old Walty.
look, I think that's the thing. It's about that's called empowerment.
Yeah.
You know? So sharing with your teams, actually, the fancy word for that's actually empowerment. But when you're sitting beside someone and you're going through the same shit situation and you're shoulder to shoulder through it, that's sharing the problem together and working your way through it as a team. That's where you get some absolute gold. Yeah. And that sort of stuff is it's weird because most of the time when I'm coming into an organization in a response, particularly in a crisis response, when something bad's really happened, sometimes that focus and that shared hardship that you're all in the bunkers together actually really starts to spin out of it some amazing teams and amazing sort of trust between team members that they may have never had a chance to work through. So there is a positive sometimes throughout these crises.
Yeah. Now, mate, the other thing...
I still love that.
Scotty Tab Lewis, he wants to see Turts we trust. Hey, Scotty, keep what you wish for, my dear friend. If I run another show, I'll be divorced. Now, this is really important. It doesn't need to be perfect. 70% plan is often better than waiting for 100%. Analysis by paralysis. I reckon there'd be that many businesses out there right now trying to get it absolutely smack on perfect and just doing their own heads in trying to do it.
Yeah, and this is that fine line. It's always a hard one to sort of tell people. On one hand, you're saying take a step back and think about the problem, then execute a plan before you go through it. But and then on the other hand, you're saying 70% plan executed with extreme violence is what we used to talk about is better than waiting for 100% solution when it's all over. So analysis paralysis is the problem. The solution to that is making a decision and backing yourself and working through it. And the quicker you can make a decision logically with a sequence or a plan that you've got or a process that you apply to a situation, the better you're going to be at responding to these. And as you solve one problem, each time you solve a problem, it becomes a bit more like muscle memory. Get another problem thrown at you. Okay, I'm going to put that through the washer again. Here's my I'll write it down. Here's the problems. Here's the solutions. Take it to a mate. Next time, I'm going to roll through and have the solution already there that I've already thought of previously, that I've already run by the mate. I know the answer to that one. And every time you're making a decision and working your way through it, you get better and better and better. And as you do that, you become a better leader because you're a better decision maker under uncertainty. So that repeating, creating muscle memories. So is what we were built into us. It's that sort of 10,000 hours theory from Gladwell about, professional mastery comes from executing a skill. Leadership is a skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something that's taught and you learn along the way through experience, but you subconsciously don't realize it until someone says, hang on a minute, you've been taught this, Yeah. So stepping back and actually thinking about it like that means that the more you're putting yourself in these situations, the better leader you're going to be.
Absolutely. Mate, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight. I've had an absolute ball. We said this the other night when we spoke. We could run a 5-part mini-series.
In TURTS we trust is the next one, mate. That's it. That's the next one. It's solid gold. We've got it.
I reckon. Well, Matt, the producer's just written me a note. I'm out if that happens. So, no, mate. Seriously, thank you so much for your time. That's invaluable information to give all those leaders out there. And I'm sure you're doing such a great job for all the people that you're working for. And mate, thank you. I know I can give you a call at any time and you're happy to talk to me and help me through. And I'm sure you do that for a lot of people. You're doing a hell of a job as the president of the mighty Ball and Greythorn Junior Football Club. I'm gutted that we can't get out there and play.
Yeah, it's bloody disappointing. That's a disappointing one in itself. So the one pleasing thing, though, thank you tonight too, is that they got the league meeting on tonight and I'm here. So I'm rapt to be here.
Don't worry about the YJFL, mate. You are a special guest on 100. You're on Mate to Mate at 8. So don't worry about that. You're a star. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to being able to catch up with you personally and have a beer.
Absolutely, Ted. Thank you, mate. Thanks for all the great work you and the guys are doing, mate.
Thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it. There was Chizza. 3 votes. G. Chisnall. He's an absolute star, and I love talking to him. Now, next week, we have the CEO of Ted Whitten Foundation, Mr. Nick Holland. Played golf with Nick just before COVID started, and I chewed his ear off, and he's agreed to come on the show, talking about all the great work they're doing at the Ted Whitten Foundation. Unfortunately, this year they're not going to get the game up, or they're hoping to get something up, but we'll talk to Nick about that and all the trials and tribulations that he's been through as a player and now as a businessman. So really looking forward to catching up with Nick next week. Now, as we do every week, we thank those who do so much for us that no one does more than us, for us, than the great Shelley Wood. She's a star. Splice Communications. You need anything to do with communications, and a lot of people do right now. You turn to only one person, that's Shelley Wood. She's a star. Thank you very much, Shelley. We love you. To Brett Phillips, who runs the only tennis show on SEN in this country called The First Serve, does a great deal for the tennis community and also for us at 100 Words Mate to Mate. And my dear friend and board member, Matt Atkin, who runs Atlas Brokers. If you want to refinance your home loan, you want to refinance some plant equipment or whatever, you only ring one person. That's Matt Atkin from Atlas Brokers. They do a huge amount for us, and we could not be more grateful to them and the team. To all my board members, not my board members, to all the board members of 100 Words Mate to Mate, thank you so much for the time and effort you put in. No one puts more effort in than my producer, who's behind the screen of this. He's an absolute star, Mr. Matt Walton. Thanks, Walty. To everyone, have a great week. I know it's hard. Keep busting through. Keep communicating with your mates and make part of this every day. Ring a mate and ask him this. G'day, mate. How's your day out of 10, or how's your week been out of 10? It's not that hard. You'll be surprised at the result. Thank you so much. We will see you next week. See you later.